Hi family, welcome to round 2 of Ancestry for the Evins and Bryans families. Today I'm going to talk about kings of England and the fact that we are almost assuredly related to a specific king of England. So there's a famous author called Adam Rutherford. He wrote a book, he's a genetic expert, he wrote a book, it's called Family Fortunes. And in it he argues that everyone who has predominantly British Isles family history, which means England, Wales, Scotland, Ireland. So if that's your family history, which it is for both Bryans and Evins, then you are related to King Edward III, who was born in early 1300s. And so here's his mathematical rationale for that. He starts out and says every person has 2 parents. Before that, they have 4 grandparents. The next generation up, they would have 8 great-great-grandparents, 16 or 8 great-grandparents, 16 great-greats, etc. So it goes up, and he says by the time anybody who's living now gets to about 1600, that line will have 32,000 people. So there are 32,000 people in Greater England, Greater UK, that you would be related to, or you would be direct descendants of. Okay? Then let's go the other way around. So this is working up this way. Let's go down from King Edward III. So in 1312, King Edward had 13 kids. They had many kids. By the time he got to great-grandkids, the number was in the hundreds. So, if you start from his great-grandkids and just assume every generation is about 25 years and assume only 2 kids out of each generation, by the time he got down to 1600, he would have 32,000 direct descendants. So, 32,000 this way, 32,000 this way by the time you get to 1600. So, if any one of this 32,000 matches any one of this 32,000, then you're a direct descendant. Of course, we have no way of building a tree that big and knowing who they are. But he calculated, based on the population of England during the time, took a statistician and said, what is the likelihood that there is at least one overlap in 2 trees of 32,000 with the population of England at the time? The likelihood is 99.9999 and several more nines. So it is almost, he said, it is almost a given that every person with English heritage, born in the late 19th or 20th century, born in the 20th century or on into the 21st century, is related to King Edward III. So, now it turns out that on the Bryan family tree, I found it. I found a link, we may actually have more than one, but there is a link that shows that King Edward III was Kenneth Ray's 18th great-grandfather, 18 G's. So great with 18 greats in front of the word grandfather. So I'm going to show you that today. Then I'm going to show you the Evins, and I don't have enough, there is no research to show right now how that connection is. I know it's there, and I'm going to show you how close we got to that, and the connection that we do have with the kings of England. What I'm trying to do is not just find who these people are and where they lived, but how they got from England to America, why each of the major changes happened, and the events along the way. And it's a fascinating story. I think I know why both families came to America. I think I know how they got several of the steps along the way with how they got to Texas, I think I know some religious history. I think I know some history involving slavery that involves both families. And so I think you'll find it fascinating. But let's get to King Edward III. Okay, here you have the Bryan family tree, and I'm going to show you how Kenneth Ray, right here, is related to King Edward III. So, Kenneth Ray's parents are Reagan, Elihu Reagan is his given name, Reagan and Sadie. And I'm going to follow the actual Bryan family name. So I'm going to follow the father. So I'm going to go from Elihu to Abner to Aaron Ernest to William Joel, back to James Bryan. And so William Joel was the first one to actually be in Texas. He was there before it was a state. That'll be an interesting story when we get to it. So back to William Tobias. So in the 1730s is when the Bryans came to America from England. That's my little ship portrayal here. So he was the immigrant, Bryan. And then go back through his family. So now we're back into the 1600s, back into the 1500s. So now we're going to come to Sir Francis. Sir Francis is the despicable member of the family. His nickname is the Vicar of Hell, and he is portrayed in, of all the family relatives, he's probably in the most movies. He was in a series called The Tudors. He was in a series on PBS called Wolf Hall. He's also in portrayals, movies about King Henry VIII. So we'll talk more about him later. So his grandfather is the first Bryan that the longest I can trace the Bryans back to 1400. But you can see we're still more than 100 years after Edward. But fortunately, what happened is Chief Justice Bryan's son married a lady who is from the Bourchier family. So who are the Bourchier families? Well, right back here is King Edward III. King Edward III had a son. So now, unfortunately, this son didn't have very many kings because he wound up being executed by his father. So you can see that he was not that old, about 40 years old, 42. And but he did have a daughter. He and the Duchess de Bohun had a daughter. This is where our line comes in. So they had a daughter named Anne, and she married into the Bourchier family and would eventually get to the Bryans. So let's follow. She came from the de Bohun family. So fortunately we can follow the de Bohun family all the way back past the King of England, all the way back to 1100s, and this is the de Bohun family who were involved in the signing of the Magna Carta. So that's the Bryan family. Now let's switch over to the Evans family. We're going to start down here with Mary Ellen and her parents, William Wesley and Mary Elizabeth Hayden. Again, we're going to follow the male line. So we're going to follow William Wesley, James William, Obadiah. This is my favorite Bryan relative. He's the one who changed the spelling. Everything you're going to see before is E-V-A-N-S. Everything after is E-V-I-N-S. He's the one who changed it. I think I know why. And it's a fascinating story that involves the Civil War. So, let's go back here. Back here, this is the Evans. Colonel John Evans is the one who immigrated to the U.S. So, if you keep going it back in the Evans family, you're going to find this is the first Evans who actually uses the last name Evans. Prior to that, there'll be names like this: Richardus Hicks from the family of Evans, Alts Evans. So it's the first time it's used in its normal context is right here in late 1500s. So, but at this point, going back to Benjamin, we're going to follow his mother's line. So, and you're going to see some Godwins, and then work our way back through here to find this lady right here, Dorothy Mallet. Dorothy Mallet is the end of a long chain of Mallets who also were signers of the Magna Carta. So they lived in a castle, which is at Enmore, and you're going to see many of them were knights. This is Sir Hugh Mallet. Before him there was Sir William Mallet. Before them there was Lord Hugh Mallet, and the names recur back and forth. They have Baldwin and Hugh and John over and over and over. So these go all the way back to the oldest Mallet, 1022, companion of William the Conqueror. So now you have the setting. In both family trees, we have knights, we have barons, we have lords who came down. None of them are in the royal line, but so you can see if we're back here in the 1300s, while the other one was king, we have several people in the family tree. The problem is I don't know the connections, so I can't branch out here to find out which one of these or which ones of the ones down here will lead back to King Edward III. But it's 99.9999 whatever percent sure that there is one. I just don't know where it is. Okay, so that's what I've got for today. So you can see that both families have very similar backgrounds. Both of them came from England. Both of them came over on boats about 60 years apart. You saw the other one who came over was in the Bryans came over in something like 1730, and the Evins came over in 1630 in the late 1600s. So the Evins were actually here first. So, and this guy's an interesting character. Colonel John Evins is also called Colonel John or Indian Trader Evins, and his son is also Indian Trader. So we're going to get that fascinating story as we go on. So for now, all I want you to see is the connection that our family has to all of the things that happened in the history of England. My goal in all of this is not just to say who are our ancestors and where are they from, but how did they get from there to here, why, and what are the interactions they've had with history. And there's a lot. So, till next time.